Welcome back, Danish Dynasty Leaguers. Today we're going to be looking at one of our founding fathers, and that is Per with the Ugly Ducklings. And he's got a pretty loaded roster from top to bottom if you have a look at it. He started at the top, looking up at QB. He's pretty well set with Drew Brees, who is one of the elite, top three quarterbacks, still running, not too old, but it is about time to start thinking about his replacement, and the Ducklings has got you covered. He's got Russell Wilson as his QB2, who is going to be starting for most teams in this league. Russell Wilson has a lot of upside. They've added Harvin. They've added, a lot of defensive players. I have a feeling Wilson is going to be in for a great career there in Seattle, and he is one heck of a quarterback too. So he has a great transition QB when Brees gets a little bit older. So Ducklings is in great shape there. He's got a good QB3 in Tannehill. Now, I wanted to make sure to mention his quarterback 4. He really jumps out at me. He's pretty elite. Jamarcus Russell, he was a former number 1 pick in the draft. He's a stud, 280-pound stud. He enjoys donuts. He enjoys throwing the football to Darius Hayward-Bay. And, he's just a monster. And I'm just kidding. So, we'll move on down to his running backs, though, where he's looking equally as elite with Ray Rice, who is still a top 5 option. He's getting a little bit older, still 25, but he's got a lot of tread on his tires. I worry about Rice, not so much in 2013, but maybe beyond that. Matt Forte is another guy in that ballpark who has had a good career so far, but I think he's getting a little bit older. Same with Jamal Charles. He's a good player as well. I love Charles as a flex player, and that's what he's looking at as his third running back. So Rice, Forte, and Charles as his top 3 backs forms one heck of a starting tandem. It's really hard to find something better than that. All 3 of those guys could be considered an RB1 on a lot of teams. I have dynasty leagues where my best running back is just a hair better than, Charles. And that's just the way it is in some leagues. So he's really in great shape to have these 3. And I will tell you already, just looking at his QBs and running backs, he's got to have some pretty dang weak wide receivers to not be considered a championship contender. But moving on down his running backs, he's still okay with depths. CJ2K had a bad start to last year, but he finished it off pretty strongly, and he is a great running back for when you have that bye week for Charles or Forte or Rice. 3 weeks, he's probably going to be starting CJ2K throughout that season, where he's going to be flexing him. Because if you look on down at his receivers, his best bet is going to be CJ2K every week on that flex where he has buys for his running backs. Or injuries, for that matter, because Forte tends to get banged up. Hillman and Pierce are his RB5 and 6, and they provide good depth, good upside, definitely worth keeping around. At wide receiver, I should say, he's loaded from the top 2. I love Calvin Johnson. There's not really much bad you can say about him. He's the best receiver in the league, bar none. He's got a quarterback that is not that great, it turns out, throwing to him, but man, he is great at throwing the ball to Calvin Johnson. Stafford might not be the greatest QB. He has some mechanical flaws, but getting the ball to Calvin Johnson, he's the best there is at that. So that's a great situation for the Ducklings to be in. Also, Dez Bryant really broke out last year. He's great at wide receiver, too. He's a 1 for a lot of teams. Moving on down the board, Vincent Jackson had a good year last year. His wide receiver 3, he's in good shape there. Now, Vincent Brown is where things start to get a little more dicey. I like Brown. I really do. I like him as a breakout guy. But I will say I don't want to start Vincent Brown 3 weeks out of the season, and that's where Duckling's at. You start 3 receivers, you're going to have Calvin, Dez, and Vincent Jackson. Then after that, you're looking at Vincent Brown, he also has Rod Streeter, who, Hayward Bay's gone, so Streeter could get some PT, but I think we're going to be seeing a lot more Denarius Moore, Jacoby Ford, and Kreiner. I think Streeter was kind of an anomaly last year. He also has Greg Childs, which is a good upside guy. He missed the whole year last year, but that Minnesota core is wide open. Moving on down to tight end, his receivers, I would say, are the weak point of the team to this point. Looking on down to tight end, he's loaded again with Jimmy Graham, who, as we all know, is a top 2 option, him and Gronk. That's it. And I like Hernandez, but Gronk and Graham are the shit. They're running a show. I also like Olsen, his TE2. So he's in good shape at tight end. It's going to be hard to find a better pair than those 2. In terms of draft picks, Ducklings is not loaded with first rounders, but he does have the 2-6, which is not a bad pick at all. If I were him, I'd be looking at a receiver in that ballpark. If he happens to be so fortunate that Robert Woods or somebody like that slides, you better jump all over it. If he can grab Quentin Patton, possibly Marcus Wheaton, these are guys that he could be looking at there at the 2-6. Marquise Wilson. There's a few guys. I like Stedman Bailey in that second round range. There's a lot of guys that he could be looking at there, and I would say that wide receiver depth would be his number one go-to. 3-3, if I had his picks, I'd be drafting another wide out there. Again, maybe someone a little further on down the list, Aaron Dobson, something like that. But I'd be looking at receiver at all these picks. He also has a 4-8, not a whole lot to, that's just a shot in the dark, probably a deep tight end or QB or running back, something like that there. You never know. You just take a stab with one of those picks. But I will say, looking at the Ugly Ducklings team, I think it's going to be hard for anyone to knock him off. He's easily a playoff team, if not a championship contender, with great quarterback play, very, very good running backs, very good top 3 receivers. That's his biggest issue, is if he loses Vincent Jackson or Calvin or Des Bryant, then he is in trouble. But as it stands, he's in pretty good shape, and as long as people stay healthy, I think he'll be okay. So look out for the Ducks in 2013. I would say definitely a favorite.